Hello. If you are here, you're here to learn about the integumentary system, or, as many might imagine, our skin, and some other things. So let's get into it. Our integumentary system is mostly skin because our skin is considered the largest organ in our body. And when people say that, automatically I'm like, what the heck? That seems fake. But that's just because an organ is at least two tissues that are doing the same thing. So, like, same job for those tissues. This system is not just our skin, it's also our hair, our nails, sensory receptors that are embedded in our skin, as well as some glands. And if we think back to the last unit we just did when we talked about glands, these ones are a little bit different, so maybe you're putting like a star there. These ones do not do anything inside the body, so they are all like exocrine glands, or they are secreting things outside the bloodstream, which is how I remember that. So this one will include things like sweat, but not things like dopamine or testosterone or any hormones that stay inside the body. Our integumentary system and all the skin and tissues that go with it are super important for maintaining homeostasis. We know that all the time. We're always coming back to that word, homeostasis. So, like, how are we keeping everything in like a balanced system? Our skin helps maintain homeostasis because it's a protective covering for all the other stuff that's inside of our body. It helps us stay the perfect temperature, so if we were getting too hot or too cold, our skin will do stuff to help us out there. It also slows down water loss, so if you did not have the integumentary system, you would be a dehydrated human being. The inside of the skin also holds sensory receptors. That's what we are seeing over here in this image as well. This system makes certain biochemicals that we need to survive, and it also gets rid of wastes. So before we go into talking about vitamin D, there are 4 sensory receptors that we have going on in our skin. The first one is a thermoreceptor. When I see the word thermo, I already know we're talking about hot and cold. The second one we are talking about is the Meissner's corpuscle, which senses if we are being touched. So if something brushes up against us, we know that is there. So that's the second sensory receptor in our skin. The third one, nobody's favorite, the nociceptor. That senses pain. So if you're getting pinched, you get a shot, you get a sunburn, it doesn't feel good. There's those receptors in our skin that are telling our nervous system that's a painful experience. And then finally, the last one senses pressure. So if I poke somebody really softly, the Pacinian corpuscle is going to tell me that they're maybe like poking me really softly. But if I'm like really like jabbing somebody with my finger, they can tell that that's like a different amount of pressure because of this sensory receptor, the Pacinian corpuscle. The other thing that we're going to go a little more in depth on is when we're talking about how this system makes certain biochemicals that we need, we're really talking about the production of vitamin D. So vitamin D is really important. We cannot store calcium in our bones and teeth without it. And our body actually kind of makes it with like a lot of materials that already exist. So vitamin D, and if you're taking notes on this, maybe something that you're drawing in your notes, like over here, just like this one, is a little sunshine, because the sun is going to play an important role in how we use this vitamin. We can eat this vitamin, so we can get it in our diet by eating lots of different things, but our skin can also produce it. And this is possible through our digestive system. As we are breaking things down, eating lots of stuff every day, a molecule that often is made from what we eat is a molecule called dehydrocholesterol, which is the molecule off to the side over here. So this molecule looks like that. And this is a molecule that our body cannot use. kidneys and liver cannot break it down. So what our body does to make it a usable form is, instead of trying to break it down with chemicals in our body or organs in our body, it brings that molecule up to the surface of our skin when it is in our blood. And if you go outside in the sunshine, the UV rays from the sun like change this form. So like UV rays can break apart bonds and change like the form of molecules. Once this happens, now it's in a different form, and our kidneys and liver can break it down for us to use. And one of the parts that's broken down is that super important vitamin D. So if you were taking the notes that I gave you, there is a chemical that looks like this one in your notes. You should be labeling that dehydrocholesterol. This one is not vitamin D. Vitamin D would be like a byproduct of this, or a different molecule that is made from the same parts of this. All right, just like ogres, onions, and many other things, our skin also has layers. We're going to look at 3 of the layers. The first one, or the outside layer, is the epidermis. We can see that like in this image up here. It's this top layer. It's the outer layer. It's the layer that you can touch right now when you are when your skin is exposed. The middle layer is the dermis. That's a thicker layer, and it is just under the epidermis. And then finally on the bottom, we don't always consider it skin because it's really like an adipose tissue, is the subcutaneous layer. So part of the epidermis, if we took a closer look at that outside layer, we would see that there's like a lot of things that make it up. Some key facts about it is that it does not have blood vessels. So if you get cut and there's not bleeding, you've only cut the epidermis. It is composed of special cells called stratified squamous epithelium, and they are flattened epithelial cells. The deepest layer of this is nourished by blood vessels, but blood vessels do not run through it. So the cells in the epidermis at the very bottom of it are almost like touching those blood vessels, so they do get nutrients from them, but they're not getting like blood running through it. And what happens in this layer is that cells in the epidermis grow and divide, just like many other cells in our body. When the cells get older, they get pushed closer to the end of our skin, where they eventually die. So if you've ever been somebody that you look at your own skin, it looks a little dry, maybe a little ashy, what you're really looking at is those dead cells in your epidermis. It's normal. They're getting replaced, but what you're looking at is like dry, ashy skin really is just a lot of dead cells. The epidermis is our first layer of protection too. It really stops us from losing water from the softer, more moist tissues underneath. If we get scraped up or cut, it's pretty dense and durable, so like it's not going to break away really easily. It keeps out a lot of harmful chemicals. If you think about things that are really dangerous to breathe in, but it's fine to walk near them because your skin's not like absorbing it. And it also keeps out pathogens. A lot of sicknesses we have to either like breathe or like consume to get sick. There's some exceptions to that, but for the most part, the like germs and viruses and like gross things around that can make us sick are kept out by the outer layer of our skin. And melanin is produced here, and we'll take a little closer look at exactly what melanin is. But here's just like another model of what our skin looks like. We can see that the epidermis kind of ends on this bumpy part. The thickest part, right, is the dermis. Then we've got a little subcutaneous layer, that yellow part on the bottom, and under that is like our muscles. So not a lot of layers to this system. In the epidermis, which is what we're looking at over here, this is just epidermis, we do produce a pigment called melanin. And melanin is a pigment that's in our skin, and it provides us our skin tone and color. Melanin can also be found in our hair and our eyes. That's what gives those structures their color as well. And there are special structures within a cell called melanocytes, which we can see in this model down here. And a melanocyte produces melanin. So the melanocytes are sending off pigment into our skin. And that pigment helps like absorb or like block UV rays from getting like through all of our cells and potentially like breaking up the bonds in our DNA. If that happens, we get a lot of damage to our DNA. So it is like blocking that sunshine or those UV rays like we were talking about before. There's my little sun. Fun fact, all humans have the same amount of these cells, but the thing that's different is our genes are going to tell those structures to produce either more melanin or less melanin, depending on what we've inherited. So it's genes that are determining our skin color. Maybe you're somebody that you go outside a lot in the summer and you've noticed that, hey, I get a lot darker in the summer or I get tan. That is your body responding to the extra UV light and trying to protect you, and sending out more of that melanin. So we know if we see more UV, we're also going to see more melanin. It's protecting us. So thanks, body. The next layer of our skin is called the dermis. It's directly under the epidermis. And if we were to look really closely at it, we would see that like where the dermis and the epidermis meet is not even. It is super uneven. It's almost like wavy or looks like little fingers. And those are called epidermal ridges. And a fun fact about those is that when we are in utero, when we were a fetus, those epidermal ridges and our skin was still forming. It was really malleable. And when we pushed against the uterine wall of the person who was pregnant with us, the epidermal ridges like pushed into our skin, and that's what made our fingerprints. If you like close your hand too and you can see the creases on it, those were also the same creases that you made on your hand when you first were developing skin, and it creased together. Those ridges are the most abundant in your hands and feet, which is why it's so pronounced that you have like fingerprints or thumbprints. And you can look at your own thumbprint if you would like to. You could color one of your fingers like I did earlier today. And while the ink of that marker is still wet on there, if you press your finger into your notes, you could even study what type of fingerprint you have. There's a few different types, but the most common three are either arches, loops, or whorls, and you might have something different on each finger. So you could put your fingers in your own notes, ink them up, and start comparing what types of category of fingerprint you have. And then if I collect your notes, I do have evidence to maybe plant your fingerprints at the scene of a crime. Just kidding, I would never do that. All right, moving on with still parts of the dermis. Besides being directly under the epidermis, our dermis helps bind that top part to the things that are underneath it, like the subcutaneous layer. Taneous. Ooh. And our dermis is made of fibers that give skin its toughness and its elasticity. And what we mean by elasticity is if I smile, my face does not stay like that after I'm done smiling, which is nice because it really helps us stay like malleable and communicate things, and it also just seems to be more comfortable. It's also very like a dense tissue, and it's really hard to like wreck the dermis. It's very tough. It's full of a lot of connective tissues and fibers. So that way, if you are someone that goes biking and you fall off your bike, you don't rip all your skin off, right? It stays really connected and really durable. There are blood vessels that run through the dermis, and these help regulate our temperature. So maybe in my notes, I'm putting a star here to homeostasis because I know that regulating temperature is always trying to keep the body balanced. So if we need to let some heat go from our body to cool ourselves down, The vessels in our dermis will get a little larger to let more heat off. If the opposite happens, they'll get a little smaller. We also have a lot of nerve cells that are, and their processes that are located through the dermis. So if you've ever gone to the doctor and you've gotten your reflexes tested, the cells and the nerve processes that are happening there reside in our dermis. All right, we are almost done. So here's a little brain break. Can you name these 6 famous people's tattoos? If you can name all 6, you're doing better than some of my entire classes. And if you can't, that's okay. I wouldn't have been able to name these either. So you can pause this, think about it if you want, or you can just wait 3 seconds and then we'll reveal who they are. Those are the tattoos that belong to those people. I always like the trumpet one. I'm a girl, Lady Gaga. But, tattoos are cool. And what a thing to think about after just talking about the dermis. Tattoos are interesting because, well, for many reasons. They're permanent art, right? And they're permanent because the needle injects ink into the dermis. If you were getting ink injected into the epidermis, they wouldn't be permanent. It'd be like a henna tattoo, maybe. Lasts a little bit, but fades away as those cells die. So because dermal cells are not shed, the tattoo stays there. Unless you want to do something super painful and get a laser involved that can shatter the molecules in your skin into smaller pieces. If those ink molecules are small enough, our immune system can kind of dissolve it and remove it from our body, which is interesting to think about. All right, if you were able to tell me what it takes to keep a tattoo staying in your body and how you would remove it, you understand how the dermis works. But that's all I have for you. Thank you. See you soon.